I'm kind of
Hmm.
I I'm just kind of not really taken aback, but I'm just kind of done with the pony show that this government gives.
Right,
I'm just done with it.
right.
That's all it.
Well,
We're
well,
never going to get any real justice in this country. Period.
well, you know what? I have always said that the Constitution needs to be rewritten. Um, for one thing, that statute was put in place um, in was it 1871?
Mhm.
1871, and it said the statute originally passed to assist the government in combating Ku Klux Klan violence in the South after the Civil War. Well, I mean, as you move through the information, it finally comes down to them talking about um, the officer being reasonable, and it talks about him being reasonable as far as it says. Let me find it. It talks about that how the only way that the citizen can pretty much win a case against the police when they've experienced excessive force is that pretty much, I mean, out of all the legal language, it comes down to it has to be a case pretty much like what happened with George Floyd. It has to be
Yeah,
plain,
yeah,
clear cut. You have to see it. And plus, there has to be a law already set that says you can't kill people, and then it has to be clear and plain where any reasonable person would understand the law. And as far as the officer, he would understand it and understand that there has been a precedent, there has been a law established. And then it goes on to say that it is almost like it's unless it is plain and it is clear that he clearly violated the law, he clearly broke the law, what he did, and then it's like no matter like his intelligence level, it's like there's no reasonable doubt that this person knows this that they violated the law, that they broke the law. And so there are many times when black people have gone to court to get to fight against this qualified immunity. We lose because there's so many ways, there's so much room that they can wiggle around, that the judicial system wiggles around in, and sometimes they just blatantly refuse to hear it
yeah. And they
because
created it.
and it's up to their interpretation. Everything that we bring to court is still up to their interpretation, even though the law is on the page in black and white. So it seems to me that even the judicial system are violating our rights as well. So
They
my question begins and starts as, how do we win? Because they tell you in black and white that
yeah.
unless it is plain as day that this person clearly broke the law, you're not winning. You're not going to win. This
And the
person
thing
is
is,
going to
does this
get qualified immunity. They will.
and does it even extend to the average white American citizen who does this? Because listen to this real quick. To our Asian friends, we will not tolerate bigotry against you, and to those perpetuating anti-Asian bigotry, we will pursue you to the fullest extent of the law. We cannot allow the recent tide of bigotry, intolerance, and prejudice against Asian Americans go unchecked, per Senate Majority Leader Charles E. Schumer in a floor speech. 94 to 1 was the long no
Hmm.
vote.
Hmm.
94 to 1.
Well, see,
Based on the years worth of rising attacks on pandemic began in Wuhan, China, and that's it.
And
well, here's what we got to remember. We're dealing with history.
mhm,
We're dealing with historical issues. that have been in place uh, since time,
Since 1871.
for lack of a better term, it's been here forever.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, and the uh, uh, the issue of qualified immunity, that was something that it's not constitutional in its makeup. It
Exactly,
just
Right.
Clarence.
it just says that a police officer cannot be personally sued
Mm-hmm.
for actions that he does uh, under while he's on duty,
Mm-hmm.
those sorts of things. Well, that's always negotiated in police contracts to
Mm-hmm.
have that uh, component in there. And what is being proposed, we have to look at it from the perspective of it's part of the overall police reform bill. There's a lot of reforming that has to be done in all police departments because it, the way the way they're ran and the way they're set up, there are various people within our communities that will never get a fair shake because you can get into areas of hiring and promotions and so forth. And see, we have to understand that we have police officers on a lot of these, uh, probably all police departments. We have police officers on these departments that should not have a gun and a badge, but they do.
Mm-hmm.
And then once they get on, then in the case of Chauvin had 18 complaints against him for various excesses of force and discriminatory practices that he used. See, he
Mm-hmm.
should never have been in a position to do to Floyd what he did because he should not have been a police officer. We have the same thing right here in Chicago.
Right.
We have people on the police department that should not be there, but they are. And they are protected, a lot of them, by their peers,
Mm-hmm.
because then you have that, we often hear the blue wall of silence or whatever, but it amounts to any large organization that you will have this camaraderie within those organizations where uh, one person won't say nothing against another, or
Mm-hmm.
in the case of the dispatcher that testified in the Floyd case,
Mm-hmm.
when she called the sergeant, one of the first things she said was, "Well, I don't want to appear to be a snitch." Because within the law enforcement community, that is something that is unacceptable by many police officers. Is, well, no, you don't tell if you see an officer doing something wrong, and it carries over into the uh, uh, into your dispatch operators because they
Mm-hmm.
feel a part of the police department because they are really. And many of them have relatives who are police officers.
Right.
Uh, there you have that dichotomy. So when you start making changes to things, there is a lot of things that have to change, and it's not going to happen all at once. It's going to take
Mm-hmm.
time because this stuff has been around for generations, and it's going to take a lot to change it. But there has to be a willingness to do it.
Exactly. There has to be
Yeah.
a willingness, but you know, what concerns me, is that the highest court of the land can dismiss you. Like I'm not even gonna hear that complaint. So to me, that's extremely serious. Now, a lot of times when these cases when situations like this happen, the city is sued, and then they're they pay out, and that officer isn't, because of qualified immunity, they don't get to be sued personally.
Right.
Um, but a lot of times, before they started prosecuting these police officers, nothing happened to them. Nothing. So this was the only course of restitution, was to sue them, to do something. And this was what we had. But now, since we have these situations where they are they're getting convicted, and they're going to jail, they're going to prison, and not saying that their punishment is fitting their crime, because we saw that in Chicago. That did not happen. So I know what you're saying. We have to start somewhere, and it's going to take a lot. But I almost feel like it's going to take another 100 years. I hope not, because it all stems from their laws, the laws that they made and that they interpret.
And when you consider many of the laws that we have in place now, a lot of these laws were put in place during the period of time that we were enslaved.
Enslaved, exactly. or
And
or immediately after we were free. Like
when,
this law, this is it right here.
mhm. And these laws did not take us into consideration when they
Absolutely
were
not.
making these
Nope.
laws. They
Right.
had nothing to do with us because they didn't
Nope.
consider us humans anyway.
Hmm.
And that has continued on to 2021. We still are being judged by those same laws. It was
Right.
interesting. I was reading an article today about DC becoming a state, and I read the history of how DC was actually formed, and it was formed to appease the Southern slave owners. They made DC the capital of the country because originally it was supposed to have been Philadelphia. But there was a compromise that was made to appease the Southern politicians and so forth who had interest in slavery, in order to appease them so that they could get something else that they wanted. They decided to maneuver and make the capital of the United States Washington, D.C. That's how that happened in 18, no, it was in 1790, I think it was.
Wow.
But they still can't vote, right?
They can vote, but they have no representation. And
Right.
the only
Let's
way
do it
they can
something like
have representation in Congress is if they become a state. And that's why they're fighting
Hmm.
against making them a state, because then they would have two senators and one representative coming from DC. And because DC is roughly 46% Black, who do you think the
Hmm.
representative
Hmm. Hmm.
is
that.
going to
Exactly.
Hmm.
be?
I was just ready to
Hmm.
touch on that. Yes, it's
Right.
mostly black.
So,
So
so,
Hmm.
so they're fighting that tooth and nail. The Democrats, for political purposes. Now, let's not lose sight of what the real deal is here. The Democrats are pushing statehood for DC now because it would give them the opportunity to add two Democratic senators to the Senate and a representative, another representative in the House of Representatives up until they have an election. But I'm pretty sure you will always have a Democrat coming out of Washington, D.C., because it's 46% Black, and they probably will vote. But they're
Hmm.
fighting that because uh-uh, that changes the whole power structure
Hmm.
of
yeah.
government if you make DC a state. And DC is larger than two current states that we have. Now, DC is larger than population wise, it's larger than two of the current states that we have right now.
Mm, wow.
Yeah, their
So
politicking is amazing to me, you know.
Hmm.
And we're and like you said, Gail, it's gonna take 100 years, but it has already taken more than 400. So
I know. And the thing.
and my thing is with passing these bills, and because here in the U.S., basically African Americans drive the economy for these Asians. So now here's a mental picture for you. You pass this, we're in there getting our nail, not we, because I don't, getting our nails done, buying their in their beauty supply places, which they gave that to the Koreans as their reparations, our hair care and beauty industry. And now you have, like, here in Chicago, we've been having incidents where they're jumping on some of their patrons and don't care. And then, when the police get there, they side with them. Okay, so now you go into their salon or whatever, and they accuse you of something, decide they don't want to pay you. You're in court now for discrimination. If they, decide to lie on you, which they have done, because they jump on these women and they put them out and still
Hmm.
keep their money.
Hmm. Yeah. So for the people who
So
may
it's
not
like
know
we from a
that,
rock and a
okay,
hard place.
right,
And
but I just want to say real quick, Marcy, for the people who may not know what Marcy's referring to, she's talking about the many incidents in Chicago that we know of, where we've seen even in the news where the Asian shop owners, whether it's a beauty salon or beauty supply store, having confrontation with black patrons, black female patrons, and they physically attack the black female patron, and I mean really attack them. So that's what she's referring to when she says if there's a disagreement, that now you could possibly be sued for discrimination because because they put this law into place.
and jail, because it's going to be a
Yeah, in
felony
jail.
law. They're going
Exactly.
to say it's a hate crime against you. You're talking
Right.
about 20 years. You're talking about 20 years. And just because you think they're unassuming people, you don't know how
Hmm.
gut my term, gut bucket they are. You know what I'm saying? Or
mhm,
grimy that they are. Just because you don't know them don't mean that they're not grimy. That, I mean, all races of people have their lower class, and they people who deceive and who kill, who hurt, who murder, all of that. And but you tell it to a mass amount of people in the media, black peoples are the predators right now. So
Well,
I
they
I
make us the predator of
this belief
yesterday, today, and tomorrow, and
exactly.
mm-mm,
and
that's
and and
unacceptable.
for those who patronize these businesses and don't know any better, and refuse to even learn or what have you, now it's people like us who have to inform them that you may be putting yourself in further harm's way, not just for them physically
Hmm.
putting their hands on you, but now they
Right.
have a law that says that you can be jailed and sued
Yeah.
for being discriminatory towards them. And what if it's a confrontation where there's discriminatory towards you, which has happened. It
Hmm.
has happened to me before, and this, and I'm not saying all, so public don't think I'm saying all, but I'm saying as a as a group, as a huge thing, these things are going to take place. These things are already taking place. And we're not crying that everybody bothers black people. No, everybody don't bother black people, but black people get bothered by everybody. Period.
Yeah. Yeah,
you know.
and
And when it comes to court and when it's my word against yours or what have you,
mhm.
80% of the time, if not more, we lose out. We lose
Yes,
out.
yes. And
And
I'm gonna say too about how the courts look at this qualified immunity. It seems to me that the fact that the burden is on the victim so much as when it's us, that how they're saying it has to be blatant that a law was violated. It has to be, just as we all saw it on video. I feel like that's the only way that we can win our cases against crimes against us as well, because it's going to be up for interpretation as everything else. Everything is, but it's just everything so stacked against us. You
Well,
know.
see, here's what we have to remember. For generations, we've been at the mercy of, uh, as it relates to police departments. We've been at the mercy of what they decide happened in any particular incident. And when they put it in a report, because we never had videotaping of the incidents, and let's face it, if that young lady had not recorded George Floyd's murder, Chauvin would still be out of jail
Yes.
because they had already prepared a report about what had happened,
Hmm.
and it had nothing mentioned about him being held down, uh, Chauvin's knee in his neck. None of that was mentioned in this report. It
Hmm.
stated that he passed away at the hospital because of a medical once he got there. And if you notice, I did watch the trial. I watched the whole thing.
Okay.
His defense attorney, that was his approach to the case, was to say that because he had all of these pre-existing conditions, that was the reason that he died. He never mentioned the fact that his client was kneeling on his neck and his back for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. He never mentioned that because that was not what they were making the issue out of from the defense perspective. But my hat is off to the prosecution. They prosecuted an excellent case, but they also had prima facie proof that this is what happened by the video. But if they did not have that video, that man would have walked because they had already came up with this boilerplate uh, report. And I call them boilerplates because if you ever just examine them, they all say basically the same thing, that whatever happened didn't happen. Here's what really happened. And it's always in the favor of, if it's an officer involved, it's always in favor of the officer. But once you got everybody walking around with cameras in their pockets because they got phones, they were able to really see what happened, which is why you still got officers that turn off these body cams because they don't want recorded what they're doing, because they still out here doing stuff, and they forget that, okay, you turn your body cam off, we got cameras all over the place.
Exactly. Exactly. And
So you don't get,
honestly,
you don't get seen
right.
in 2021. You didn't get seen in 1921.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how brazen they are. I mean, first of all, without knowing his history, the officer's history, I knew he must have done this many times before, because he was completely comfortable and completely confident that his little posse of officers with him were going to protect him while he killed George Floyd. And he was completely confident that he can do it.
Mhm.
Yeah,
He can
Oh,
do it.
absolutely.
extremely complacent
Yes,
in
and
his,
no one was going
his
to be able to stop him from doing
and
what he wanted to do that day.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And
In full
this,
view of everybody's camera phones with
mhm,
sound and everything else.
this is what I'm saying about, see, people have gotten so comfortable doing stuff that it's
Was
it's gonna take
shit.
them a while to realize that I can't do what I used to do because somebody might be taking my picture.
oh
But
yeah.
until they realize it, we're gonna go through this again. Make no,
Oh, we just went through it. The man who just shot the 13-year-old girl.
oh, you talking about the, well, if you
Yeah.
didn't see that, I've got my own feelings about that. Uh, that that 16-year-old girl that they killed in Ohio. Uh, I was on social media and I read a lot of comments. I didn't make too many, but I read a lot of comments. And uh, don't get me wrong, if policeman is wrong, he's wrong. And I'll be the first one to say he's wrong. But also, you have to understand that that incident happened in a period of time of about 9 seconds.
Yeah.
From the time he got out of his car until he actually fired his weapon, it was about 9 seconds, maybe 10. And people have to also consider the fact that even on the recording, it showed that this girl was in the process of getting ready to stab another human being. And people were all stuck on the fact, well, she was only 16 years old. Yeah, but he didn't know that at the time because he didn't have time to say nothing to nobody because they was fighting when he pulled up. And he got out the car and he trying to break up some fights. And the next thing he know, this girl has got a knife in her hand and she getting ready to stab somebody.
Yeah, it was all about these girls came to her house and she called and she was about to, but where it's going to get tricky at, none of the other officers pulled their weapon.
Mhm.
Well, I don't
None
know
of the other
all the
officers pulled their
nuance,
weapon, and
but
they
that
looked at
wasn't where
it
he was either.
and and then again, did he come on the scene first? Did he come on the scene last? The same way with the Jawan McDonald. Remember
You
when
know
you
what? Yeah, I
pulled
was
that?
going to say, Marcy,
He
it
came
looked
up
like,
last while all those
yeah.
officers was following him. They knew he was a mental. He didn't listen to nothing they said. He got out of his car. He walked over and he just shot him.
Well, see,
I
he
guess
had
he
made
figured
up,
y'all ain't gonna take care of this. I'm gonna take care of it. You got lieutenants and
right.
sergeants on the scene, and when you have that mentality, and when you first of all, you number one, a lot of these people are not clear thinking people. They're not looking at what's in front of them. And I understand you see a female with a weapon. You don't care if she a little girl, a big girl, a dog girl. But would that have been the same if that little girl was white? They don't look at us as being from the time we're about 4 or 5, a 4-year-old boy is a 10-year-old boy. A 10-year-old girl is a 30-year-old woman to some of them.
Mhm.
And you look at the fact that our drive up, this is a bunch of kids fighting melee, and okay, she has a knife. So what are the other officers thinking that did not pull their gun? But here he gets out and he pulls his gun and he's shouting, "Hey, stop all that fighting and this and that," because that's what he was saying. He was like, "Quit it, stop all that fighting," or something like that. He was saying, and then he sees the girl because I saw the girl fall and she gets up and about to stab the other girl. Now, some people would say, "Hey, grab her." This is a kid.
He never
But
got
yet,
that
in his
pistol.
mind, this is a weapon. So that's the thing with all of this, the
Mm.
mindset of these people. You got some that have strong mindsets, you got some that don't care, you got some that do care, and you got some that are clear thinkers. And the majority of these people that are committing these crimes and stuff, they don't care and they're not clear thinkers. They just hard asses. They probably was like that before they got on the police force, what have you.
Hmm.
And it's not just the police; it's just the regular, citizen. I see a video, and I have to start watching because it just riles me, where the news media crew, a man and a woman, he's reporting about wearing masks. Well, this guy decides he wants to come out of his house and attack the news guy. He didn't want him there. Never spoke a word, just attack him. And the female is trying to tell him, "What are you doing? Come on, I'm gonna call the police." Instead of all this talking, she should have been on the phone calling the police, but she was filming it as well because he attacked the cameraman. And the man is like, "Get away from me! What are you doing? What did we do?" He's asking, "What did he do?" That upset him. And a lot of times these people are walking around with here with some sort of mental issue, or they're just mean and evil. They're just mean, evil people who don't care. You know
But
what I'm saying? I
the
don't
one,
know. I can't call it. I
yeah,
can't call the one here in Chicago. That officer is a decorated officer, the one here in Chicago. And I can kind of see, looking at the video, I can kind of see that the positioning where he saw the gun the first time, but when the boy moved, you can see that the boy dropped the gun or what have you. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know. All of it is just a tragedy all the way around, period.
It is
And
definitely.
you know, but
but see,
when they get on the scene, and you know what it is about dispatching, they already had the shot spotter there, so they're looking for somebody who's firing shots, which they did at a car. So they're not coming there looking for the quiet little demure citizen. They coming there looking for the offender, the criminal.
Right.
So
The
that's the
shooter.
thing.
They're looking for the shooter.
Exactly, the
Yeah.
shooter. And
Hmm.
so people have to understand the way that stuff is relayed to them, the way it is interpreted makes a huge difference. And it
Yeah.
makes a difference in the mindset of whoever is going to these calls. It
mm,
makes a big difference.
Yeah. Yeah.
well,
And
2 points I
and
want to make.
even when you try to say, like some people will say, well, it determines the outcome determines like each officer is different and how he's looking at the situation is different, but it's happening too many times where we clearly see white citizens with their guns or they're beating on the officer. Like I saw a video the other day where this guy, a male and female officer, had him down, white citizen down, and they were trying to handcuff him, and they couldn't. He got up, he took their one of them's clubs, hit him with it, got up, got in the squad car and drove away.
Yeah,
No one reached for a taser, no one reached for a gun.
yeah.
Not one time. But you can, we're being told don't move, don't turn, don't blink, don't breathe, don't do anything. And we still get shot.
Yeah,
And
Well,
it can be by the police or it can be by a white citizen.
well, I grant you, there are enough instances that bring into question exactly what kind of people are we giving guns and badges to.
There you
oh
go.
yeah,
There you
I
go.
don't have I don't have any problem raising that question, but I will also make these 2 points too. Many times you have to make split-second decisions as a
hmm
police officer, and it's real easy for people to sit back and do Monday morning quarterbacking because now they got time to digest stuff that has come out, They got time to throw their own opinions into it or whatever. But when you have seconds to decide what kind of decision you're going to make, that's a lot of pressure. And that's where you have to be well trained. You can't hopefully have any biases that will affect you making a good, conscious, common sense decision, because it could cost somebody their life if you should make the wrong decision. But if you make the wrong, you can make the wrong decision for the right reason, and you still have to look at it and say, well, okay, were you trained properly? Did you, when you came into this job itself, uh, were you the type of person that really need to be in a job like this? Or in the case of the Ohio and the 16-year-old girl, those weren't girls that came to her house. These were adults. These were women. And the girl's father was there. He was the one that kicked that girl, that the one that she knocked down. That was her father that was kicking that girl in the head. So you got adults that are perpetuating this problem instead of solving
Yeah.
it. And then the next question they said, well, she called the police. Well, if you call the police because you got some people that have came over to your house to do you harm, then if you call the police, then you wait in your house until the police come, and then you talk to them,
Yeah.
because
But
they never went in her house. They were in her front yard. She went outside. And when you got adults that won't take control of a situation, they're part of the problem, then there's enough blame to go around when you got adults that's part of the problem. And
absolutely.
that was one of the issues there with that, as I began to look into that whole situation, uh, because they said that the woman in pink wasn't a girl, she was 40 years old, the one she was trying to stab. They said she wasn't no girl, she was 40 years old. And I'm like, oh, really? And then some other adults. And then when they identified her father as the individual who was kicked, see, it's going a whole lot more of this is going to come out.
Yeah, it is. But as we all know, when situations happen, either they outside on their cell phone, or people who are in them things, they're not thinking clearly. And you're
Mhm.
talking about a 15 or a 16-year-old girl who probably terrified because a group of women then came to her house. See, when I saw the video, I thought they were young girls, but that just shows you how old I am. But I thought they were young girls. And I did find out that that was her father, which I was like, wait a minute, he kicking a he because the girl in pink looked like she was a young girl, kicking
Yeah,
I thought
a
they were all girls. I really did too.
yeah, and kicking a
Um,
kid. So, but if you, like you said, if there's this adult and this is her father out there fighting, of course you don't come into your cognitive thinking, or you know what I'm saying, until you almost 21 years old. Of course she's enraged, she's already pissed off that it came. So yeah, she's gonna take her butt out there and fight for her
yeah,
daddy, and she's screaming and yelling and stuff. She's not gonna stay in the house. And I can't say if somebody was attacking my daughter, I would do the same thing, because the first thing you do as a parent, you're going to protect. And a kid that loves their parent, they're going to protect. They're going to do
right.
whatever it takes to help their parents. So you're right. It's a bad situation. He did
Hmm.
have to make a split decision, but like we said, from the initial part of it, there's no stepping back and no clear thinking when it comes to us. And
I
even in
agree with
all
that.
these even in all these cases, when it comes to black officers, I guarantee you they put them under the hammer,
Mhm.
and majority of them, like we all know, do wind up losing
Mhm.
their job,
Right.
going to jail.
Absolutely. And
That
so
we know of.
it's like, even when we want to say, I mean, of course, we're not trying to second guess what an officer may have to do in a split second. Of course not. Um, but we're just saying there's just too many instances of it happening for it to be a coincidence. It's
Well,
not.
the incidents that we're mainly talking about are not split second incidents.
Right, exactly. That's
See,
different.
these
Yeah.
these are things like traffic stops,
Yes,
or
Clarence.
you stop somebody that's walking down the street, and you want to know
Those are the,
what you
yeah.
doing over here, or like the traffic stop with the lieutenant in uniform there in
Yeah.
Virginia. All of that was totally unnecessary.
Right.
Oh yeah.
Or even the cases where, like, what's his name? Philando Castile, where he was in his seat belt, shot
Right.
to death in his seat belt. And and their defense is, I fear for my life. I fear for my life. I fear for my life. Really?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. First, that agent officer said he didn't know why he did it, and the one that shot the mental man, when remember in the middle of the street, and
Yeah.
he
Oh,
standing
and the
there like,
social worker
I,
was
I,
down there next to him.
yeah, the social worker trying to tell them to get back, and he was like, I don't know why I did it. I don't know. I know why you did it. The first thing y'all see is black.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it
It
makes me
it
feel
can't,
like,
it can't be anything else.
it makes me, I think we've asked this question before on this show. Are they being trained to shoot black people? Don't take a chance, shoot them. What is it? I mean, even Clarence, you tell me, even when you see particular video, when you see them attempting to take somebody into custody, does that look like proper protocol to you, how they attempt to take somebody into custody, or to pat them down, the way and the position and the stance and everything?
No,
There you
no,
go.
because we were taught in the academy, before you really get ready to take someone into custody, you make sure that they're in a position where if they move, it's going to be difficult for them to move, because you want to put them off balance. I look at this stuff where uh, they tell people to, if they're in a car, they tell them, okay, get out of the car and get on the ground. See, that's TV stuff. Or they walk up to people and who are walking down the street or whatever, and they're going to take them
Hmm.
into custody or whatever. They might tell them, oh, you get on the ground. We never told people to get on the ground. We tell them, you grab that wall over there, and I'm gonna give you directions. You take 2 steps back. And when you take 2 steps back and you leaning on that wall, the only thing I got to do, if you look like you're gonna do something crazy, all I got to do is kick your feet out from under you,
Hmm.
and you're
Hmm.
gonna fall on your face. But we never put people on the ground. I don't know where that
Hmm.
came. That, to me, that came from TV.
But
You
then
know,
too,
They,
Clarence,
no, they
but then
degrading
too,
them. They
but
made they're
let me tell
degrading them.
you, and
yeah,
then too, you will see them, like, the person never get the person away from the car. Not like by the driver's side. Sometimes the people never even make it out the damn door
yeah.
before they get shot down.
When
So,
you take a person out of a car, you take them to the back, or you take them and put them on the hood of the car. You
mhm,
don't let them stand there in the doorway, because the two black people that have gotten shot, they were in the door. They were in their car.
yeah,
They were out, and they were somehow got back in their cars because of bad procedures on the part of the police officer.
yep,
That's
That's true.
yep.
that's
And
That's
all.
even
why
like the deaf woman in Nevada, this case that happened, and now the American Disabilities Association or League is involved in it. She was deaf. She's trying to tell the
Hmm.
officer. He he pulls her over, and she's trying to, interpret and let him know that she's deaf. Well, it led to him basically almost pulling her out of the car, making her sit on the ground, made her crying daughters get out, and then demanded that the 6-year-old twins interpret for her. They said he violated every kind of law whatsoever,
The
because
violation
she's
of
trying to,
disabilities
she's
act.
scared,
Hmm.
because she's scared for her kids. He had no reason to ask her to get out the car. And it was because a landlord called on her, because I guess she lived in this building, who she had a roommate. She went back, the roommate told her to come and get your money. She went back to get her money. The landlord got mad, and the landlord called the police. But she had long left the scene. She gave a description of her car, and that's when they saw her car. And instead of asking her what happened or who she was and trying to interpret or call an interpreter like we do, hey
That's
Scott,
right.
it was an
That's right.
interpreter. He decided, and the little girls are hysterical, and they're like, "Why are you pulling our mommy over?" He told her, "Shut up." Then he told her,
Mm-mm-mm.
then the little girl was trying to tell him what the mother was saying. He totally discounted the little girls. They were twins. So he get the mom out, made her get on the ground. Then they made the kids get out the car, told them to sit down on the ground. Then he told the little girl, interpret what your mother is saying now. Kept telling them to shut up, put the handcuffs on the
Mm-mm-mm.
mom, and until he wanted to have them where he wanted them, then he told the little girls to interpret. And they were crying so profusely that they just could not
Wow.
talk.
And see,
Traumatized.
you have to ask the one basic question: what threat was this woman presenting to you that you had to take those steps? And see, that's
None.
where
None.
officers get
Right.
in trouble, because they let their egos get in the way
Hmm.
and they stop thinking. If a person is not a threat to me, number one, I'm not going to ask them to get out of their car if I have stopped them in their car. If I stop
Hmm.
them and there's some dispute from where they came from, I'm not going to necessarily ask them to get out the car. I'm going to talk to
Hmm.
them first to see how they come to me. And if I think I have to go further than that, then I might ask them to get out of the car, because now I'm thinking something else is
Hmm.
going on. But initially, just stay in your car and just keep your hands where I can see them, and we can have a conversation.
Hmm.
And I
So
might just decide to tell you to go on your way.
Right.
yeah.
So Clarence, do you think that in several, a lot of these cases where you can clearly see that training, I guess it went out the window. I
It
mean, we've
does.
seen it many, many times. So what do you suggest? Because these
Well,
the superintendents and all these folks, they're trying to figure out. Guessing they hope to figure out what to do about it, and it definitely goes back to training or simply
it
the
starts
hiring
before then.
process. The
It,
hiring process. Okay.
it starts at hiring. You
Hmm.
have to, you can't give everybody a gun and a badge. I've said this 100 times. You can't give
And not no 20-year-old either.
you know,
Not no 20-year-old
you
either.
can't give everybody a gun and a
Right.
badge.
Right.
You have to be careful about the people that you're hiring, that you're going to give this kind of authority to,
Hmm. Hmm.
because they technically have authority over whether you live or whether you die.
Exactly.
And you cannot give that kind of authority to just anybody, which means your hiring and background process and so forth has to be spot on. You have to know the type of people that you're
Hmm.
hiring. You have to make sure that you have done proper background checks, and that we had to take a psychological test. I don't know if they still give it or not, but
Hmm.
you have to find out where these people are
Hmm.
mentally, because you get people come on this job that got mental problems,
Yeah, yeah.
and they should be evaluated, especially if you have police officers that work in these high crime districts. That's just
Hmm.
like working in a war zone.
Yeah. And
They will
it's gonna take
suffer
it,
from
it's
PTSD.
gonna take a toll. Yeah.
You have to, at some point, you should evaluate them every year. And if you see that they're having some issues, take them out of that location
Yeah.
and send it and put them someplace else. You can't have somebody work in Inglewood, even though some people can deal with it, but a lot of folks can't.
Hmm.
Because on the other hand, we got a lot of police officers, and I'll say this: we have a lot of white police officers who are in the black community that are scared to death,
Yes. We know.
and and,
Then they don't need to be on the job.
and they
Right.
do,
Send them
and,
But
somewhere
you
and
up
they
know,
north.
do a lot of
you
stupid.
all know we do. You know we got them there.
Yes,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and they do a lot of stupid stuff. But
Yeah.
overall, you just have to be very selective in your processing of hiring people that you're going to give that kind of authority to.
Hmm. Hmm.
You have to be careful.
Well, I hope the mayor and the superintendent listen to what you had to say about that. And if not, I hope somebody passes the message to them because it's serious. Somebody, they should be listening to somebody who knows what real policing should look like. And
Yeah.
what we've been seeing ain't it. And
Yeah.
I'm not putting down police officers. Believe me, if I had a problem where I needed the police, I would not hesitate to call 911. Trust me, I would not. I've heard this phrase in the last week or so that nobody dislikes a bad cop more than a good cop. Good cops don't get no press. They get
No,
no kudos at all. But I want to tell you guys, you are few, and you know you are few because we got a whole lot of bad ones that's making the whole organization look like crap.
yeah, and
Yeah.
I've worked with a
And,
few,
and,
so I know
and
they out there.
I think they should change the age requirement because I don't see a difference between an 18-year-old and a 20-year-old, and you're giving this person the legal right to carry a gun. That's too much power, number one. Number two, when it comes to white and black or even Hispanic, a lot of them not, Chicago is so segregated, a lot of them have not even uh, had any sort of interchange with another race of people, or even if they're coming from somewhere that's
Yeah.
all white and they move here and you put them here with all these blacks, of course they're going to be afraid. Actually, being a police officer, if you're that afraid, you should not be one. But there's going to be some type of heightened anxiety or whatever when you're placed in a high crime area, and that's understandable because I don't even like walking in a high crime area. You know what I'm saying? But the thing is, then they have this thing that has always been here in Chicago too, that if you don't have a record and you get stopped, they're gonna find a way to put a record on you. You know, I've had to kind of like step in for my son on several occasions legally because, and then they'll tell you, okay, you don't have a record, we're gonna do something about that. You know what I'm saying? And it's just that they take on this godlike persona when
Yeah.
it comes to us and do their best to render us helpless.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Render
And
us,
you
I mean, just straight
right.
helpless to the point where this is a modern day slavery. And I
It
think deep
is.
down, when that hate is passed in your bloodstream, in
Hmm.
your bloodline,
Hmm.
I really believe they want those days to return. I really believe
I do
that they
too.
want
I do
those
too.
days to return
If they could, yeah. And
if
and
they
um
could.
and just
Yes.
like you
And,
said,
and
a lot
even
of it
the
is
higher
to
ups that make the laws, this is their mindset, and I
right.
can't nobody tell me no different
Hmm.
because and I ain't got time to explain it to other people. You have to start reading and finding this stuff. Everything that's set in motion deflects us. They want to change. They want to. I had a conversation with someone today. They want to change the DNA of melanin. They truly do. They do
Mm.
not want it to be here.
Well, you
These
know,
powerful one
when
percenters, they don't.
when you hear the phrase the browning of America, you can take it for what it's worth. And that is the fear amongst
Mhm.
non-brown people.
Exactly.
That,
When did
that
that
that's
book
what
come
they
out? 1980, something like that. I read that book. I think I was in high school when I read that book.
Gail, we're over.
Yeah, I know, I know.
Well, I
Believe me,
didn't
I
want
know.
you to get in trouble.
What? No, no, no. I'm not in
And
trouble.
people
I
better be
mean,
careful because they
yeah.
also doing this population control thing. And
Well, I
it's
just want
it
to add a couple things. I let us go on because it is such a important, we're talking about very important issues, and I wanted people to hear us, just air them out. And I wanted to add one more thing before we go that I was reading. I saw somebody sent something around recently on Facebook how I think between 1959, 59 now, you all hear me now, and 70, that some people were evicted from their homes because they voted. And I'm just saying this because when people back to the voting thing, all of these things, all of these are all variables of what's happening to us. All the entire thing, the political process, the judicial process, our health, our education, it's all tied together. It's all this systemic racism. And you just have to know if at that time period they evicted people for going out to vote. They lost their homes, but those folks voted because they knew how important it was. So I'm just saying that to say this is real, y'all. This is real and this is serious, and we have to stick together in order to overcome this. And if it takes 100 years, it's going to take 100 years, but we got to stay there and we got to keep pushing strong. So that's my final word for this evening. You guys, final words?
You're quite welcome. Well, my final word is this: the Supreme Court, people understand the Supreme Court has made some monumental decisions of late that is now coming home to roost. They gutted the civil section uh, amendment. I think it's Amendment 4 of the Civil Rights Act, uh, the Voting Rights Amendment. They
Yes.
they gutted that, and that's why these states are able to come up with all of these voting changes because there's not a federal law that says before you can make voting changes, if it's going to impact on a particular group or of people, and it can be noticed that uh, by law you can't do that. Well, the Supreme Court during the Obama administration struck that down. Because they filed suit, the
Mhm.
Republicans did, and got that thrown out. It went all the way to the Supreme Court. So just people be aware of the fact that uh, the court system is not necessarily your friend.
Thank you for saying that, Clarence, because my thing here is we always yell vote, vote, vote. We vote. Black people vote. And people see news media tell you that we didn't. And the reason why they get so nervous when it comes to our vote is always the deciding vote.
Exactly, Marcy.
So just
Yes.
imagine if we didn't vote.
Right.
Hmm. Hmm.
And that's what they're trying to do.
And
Stop
that's
it.
what they hope. That's and
You
just
know,
as you saying, Marcy, if our votes didn't count, why did they go to that level to cut away opportunities for us to be able to vote?
Absolutely.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
all
It's
right,
almost
every
like a damn if you do, damn if you don't type of thing.
it
And
is.
when
It
you
is.
don't, you can't even have the Supreme Court to stand by you. And you know, what is our faith? Our
That's
fate.
that's
And I
that's what
I, I
I'm
have a
saying.
real ugly gut feeling that it's going. with this time and age, these young people right now, they're about ready to just take up arms and be like, you know what, we're
Yeah.
done with all this.
Yeah.
We're done.
I don't see them tolerating that type of crap. I just don't see it. And they shouldn't. They
They're
should
not
not.
going to do all this marching. That they're going to start reacting, and we have to do something
We have to
because
do something before it's pushed to that. Really.
yeah,
So okay,
they're not being
everybody.
taken. Go ahead.
I didn't hear what you said last.
I
Um,
was going to say, and then sometimes I'll be wondering spiritually, is this our fate? You know,
mhm, mhm.
I
I
I
always
I
feel that too, that it's going to take divine intervention because
God is
we are in a
still in
world.
control.
And that's why I'm saying, Clarence, because we're in a world with a lot of evil, wicked people.
and do you
And
know they use Christianity against us because they want
yes,
us to be, because they know the history of Christianity makes us docile. And I really believe they use that against us. You know, I have a friend, he'll
mhm,
tell you in a minute. And he said sometimes white people ask him, "Oh, are you a Christian?" Mostly black. And he look at him square in the eye and was like, "No." It changes the whole
mhm,
conversation.
mhm, mhm. But you know
It changes
what? There's
the
a
whole
lot of truth in what you're saying because I think I mentioned that as well. I believe they use Christianity to destroy us. I really do, and separate us
conversation.
the way that they did. So, all right, everybody. Thank you for tuning into Shy Panther and Friends show, and take care of yourselves. Look out for your neighbor, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, Marcy and Clarence.
Okay.
All
Thank
right,
you,
good.
Gail. See
You're
you,
welcome.
Clarence.
All righty. Good night.
All right. Good night, guys.